Hello, I'm Corinna Harrod, and this is the Monday Night Review. Hello, and welcome to episode 130 of the Monday Night Review. I hope you are all well and have had maybe a tiny bit of sun. It's all we ask for in the UK, tiny bit. I mean, we ask for more, but my God, you can tell when the sun's been shining here because everyone is happy. So I spent all of last week working outside to do holiday cover. And I am a shadow of my former self. Sadly, not size-wise, but I was physically exhausted. Anyone who does outside work, I'm doffing my hat to you. I can't imagine doing it long term. I am but weak and feeble indoor person. In an hour's time, I have to go and have a jab. So let's get on with it. Let's get cracking. Today, we're going to talk about the first person to die. Well, the first passenger to die on British railways. That's cheery, isn't it? The Industrial Revolution was a period of unprecedented transformation and innovation in Great Britain, seeing a massive influx of people moving from rural areas to cities in search of employment opportunities in factories and mills. Urban centres like Manchester, Birmingham and Liverpool experienced massive transformation from small towns into bustling metropolises virtually overnight. Revolutionary inventions such as the steam engine, spinning jenny and power loom revolutionised the way goods were manufactured, leading to increased production and efficiency in textile factories and other industries. The introduction of mechanised agriculture also transformed farming practices, boosting agricultural output and feeding the growing urban population that the tractor has just driven past. Steam-powered factories hummed with activity, belching smoke into the skies, while canals and railways crisscrossed the countryside, eventually connecting distant communities and fueling the engine of progress. While the Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented wealth and prosperity to some, it also exacerbated social inequalities and created stark divisions between the wealthy industrialists and the impoverished working class. Harsh working conditions, long hours, and low wages in factories and mines led to widespread poverty and unrest among the labouring poor. And the person we're talking about today has a pivotal role in that. The construction of canals, roads and later railways revolutionised transport and trade, enabling the rapid movement of goods and people across the country. Canals like the Bridgewater Canal and the Leeds and Liverpool Canal facilitated the transport of raw materials and finished products, while the development of steam-powered locomotives revolutionised passenger travel and freight transport. My husband, for his stag do, went on a barge around the canals of Birmingham. And I was thinking yesterday while I was at work, I work on this old farm and a lot of the barns are now used for storage or whatever. And it's obviously not how it was used for what it was traditionally built for. And I was standing in this huge barn thinking, there's so many things that happened in this building. And I was sort of being in awe of it. And I feel like the opposite of that with my husband's stag do. Whereas once these canals were built to sort of transform agriculture and facilitate everything, the growth of industry, and now they're just drunk men going around on canal boats. The tumultuous political landscape of the early 19th century was marked by calls for reform and greater representation in government. The Reform Act of 1832, which aimed to modernise the electoral system and extend voting rights to more male citizens, was a significant milestone in the ongoing struggle for political reform and social justice. Women, of course, wouldn't get the vote until 1918. At the helm of this era of change stood William Huskisson, a towering figure in British politics, whose legacy would be forever intertwined with the rise of industry and the advent of modernity. Born into a world on the cusp of transformation, Huskisson's journey from humble beginnings to the corridors of power mirrored the trajectory of the nation in flux. Against the backdrop of social upheaval, economic expansion and technological advancement, his story is a poignant reflection of the triumph and tribulations of an age defined by innovation and ambition. Born in 1770 in Worcestershire, England, I know that if there's an American listening, they're going to enjoy that. Worcestershire, not Worcestershire. My friend from Hawaii used to say Leicester in the most beautifully British way. William Huskisson was raised in a family of modest means. His upbringing was marked by the values of hard work, education, and ambition instilled in him by his parents from a young age. Despite financial constraints, he received a solid education before being sent to Paris in 1783 to live with his maternal great-uncle, Dr. Richard Gem, who was the doctor to the British embassy there. He remained in Paris until 1792, and his experience as an eyewitness to the prelude and beginning of the French Revolution gave him a lifelong interest in politics. By the time he returned to London in 1793, his reputation as an expert in finance, his fluency in French, and his powerful political patrons saw him appointed Under-Secretary at War, which is the Secretary at War's deputy, in 1795. Throughout his tenure in Parliament, Huskisson played a key role in shaping the direction of British politics during a period of significant change and reform. He championed policies that promoted innovation, infrastructure development, and international trade. He took various positions over the years, and then in 1823, he was appointed President of the Board of Trade and Treasurer of the Navy under Prime Minister George Canning, and shortly afterwards, he received a seat in the Cabinet. In the same year, he returned for Liverpool as successor to Canning and as the only man who could reconcile the Tory merchants to a free trade policy. His efforts to modernise Britain's transportation network, including the construction of canals and railways, laid the foundation for the country's economic expansion and global influence in the years to come. After the 1826 Power Loom riots, it was Huskisson who introduced the legally binding minimum wage, of which we still have today. I was talking to my mother about it the other day. When I started working, the minimum wage was £5.95, I believe. Meanwhile, the development of the railway system in Britain during the 19th century was a transformative phenomenon that just completely changed industry and society at large. The early routes of the railway can be traced back to the late 18th century with the introduction of primitive tramways and horse-drawn wagons used to transport goods and materials. However, it was not until after the advent of the steam-powered locomotives in the early 19th century that railway truly came into its own. The construction of the world's first intercity passenger railway, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1830, marked a pivotal moment in the history of transportation. Powered by George Stephenson's revolutionary locomotive, the Rocket, this pioneering railway demonstrated the potential of steam-powered travel to connect distant cities, facilitate trade, and spur economic growth. The rapid expansion of the railway network in the decades that followed transformed Britain's industrial landscape, opening up new markets, accelerating the movement of goods and people, and stimulating investment in infrastructure and industry. The impact of the railway extended far beyond the realms of transportation. It just completely shaped every aspect of society and industry. It facilitated the growth of urban centres, of cities like Manchester and Birmingham. And these cities were industrial powerhouses. They became fueled by the influx of goods and labour. So it meant that no longer did you have to worry about finding work near you or having to really move far away from home and never see your family. But people could travel to these cities and, work there, get home to see their families a couple of times a year. It was just completely transformative. It revolutionised agriculture, enabling farmers to transport crops and livestock to markets more efficiently. It revolutionised communication as the railway made the rapid transmission of information and ideas across the country so much easier. In short, the railway was a catalyst for social, economic and technological change on an unprecedented scale, heralding a new era of progress and prosperity for Britain and indeed the world. Now, as president of the Board of Trade, William Huskisson played a pivotal role in the development of Britain's railway system, and he was a big fan. Recognising the potential of the railway to drive economic growth and modernisation, Huskisson was a vocal advocate for railway infrastructure and played a key role in promoting and facilitating its expansion. Under his leadership, the Board of Trade took a proactive approach to supporting railway projects, providing financial incentives, regulatory oversight, and logistical support to encourage investment and innovation in the burgeoning industry. Huskisson's vision for the railway was not merely one of transportation, but of transformation. He understood that the railway had the power to revolutionise industry, connect markets, improve the lives of ordinary people, which was a huge thing for him. He never lost touch with the ordinary person. As such, he championed policies that promoted the construction of new railway lines, the adoption of steam-powered locomotives, and the development of modern signalling and safety systems to ensure the efficient and safe operation of the railway network. One of his enduring legacies was his role in the opening of the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1830. As the Member of Parliament representing Liverpool, he was instrumental in securing government support for the project and played a prominent role in the historic inaugural journey of the railway. However, tragedy would strike. The historic day of the 15th of September 1830 dawned with great anticipation and excitement in the bustling city of Liverpool. Crowds gathered along the route of the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, eagerly awaiting the inaugural journey of the world's first intercity passenger railway. The air was charged with a palpable sense of optimism and possibility as dignitaries, politicians, and members of the public gathered to witness this momentum occasion. As the morning sun broke through the clouds, the gleaming trains stood ready on the tracks, their steam billowing into the sky in anticipation of the journey ahead. Flags fluttered in the breeze, bands played, and cheers erupted from the crowds as the moment of departure drew near. For many, the opening of the Liverpool and Manchester Railway represented not only a triumph of engineering, but a symbol of progress, innovation, and the limitless potential of human ingenuity. So, William Huskisson had been diagnosed with strangury, which was basically, from what I can tell, like a kidney infection. And he had been advised by Royal Doctor William George Matton to abstain from all engagements, including the opening of the railway. However, driven by a sense of duty and the belief of the importance of the event, and I guess his passion about the railways, Huskisson chose to disregard this advice, and he boarded a special train alongside dignitaries and guests, including the Duke of Wellington. So they get on, they start off, and then there's a scheduled stop for fuel and water, which gave passengers time to disembark. And while other passengers mingled on the tracks, Huskisson seized this opportunity to reconcile with the Duke of Wellington. Their relationship had soured in recent times, so he walked up to the Duke's carriage, they shook hands, they were chatting, and amidst this, the locomotive Rocket, driven by Joseph Locke, bore down on the scene, coming in the opposite direction. The other disembarked passengers either climbed back onto their seats or stepped over the northern line of the track and got completely out of the way. Now, bearing in mind, the train is not going to be going very fast. It is a steam train. A third option was available, which was to stand with one's back to the stationary coaches and sort of just stand with your back, squeeze so the train can squeeze past. Now, there's a 4-foot gap between the lines. And even though the Duke's private carriage was wider than the other standard carriages, there would still have been a lot of room. It would have been possible to stand between the stationary train and the travelling train and remain safe. However, what unfolded was a calamitous series of events. Huskisson was known to be incredibly clumsy. He had endured a long list of problems due to his regular trips and falls. He'd twice broken his arm and had never fully recovered the use of it. I don't believe he was also a very svelte man, from what I can tell. He's also only a few weeks post-surgery for his kidney problem. So the surgery at that time was probably fairly brutal. There was no antibiotics. There was no pain medication like we have now. So he was probably feeling fairly crap. In a panic, Huskisson attempts to board one of these carriages, and then he changes his mind and returns to the Duke of Wellington's carriage. At this point, Joseph Locke can see Huskisson faffing about on the tracks, so he throws the rocket into reverse, but it would take at least 10 seconds for it to have any effect. I would suggest more than that. So Huskisson panics. The gap, he worries that the gap between the stationary train and the train coming towards him is not big enough. It's 4 foot, but I can understand his concern. And so he tries to clamber into the Duke of Wellington's carriage, but the door had not been latched. And so it swings open, leaving him hanging directly in the path of the oncoming rocket, which hits the door, throwing Huskisson onto the tracks in front of the train, which then runs him over, and his leg is horrifically mangled. A door is ripped from the railway building, and Huskisson's placed on it, and George Stephenson uncouples the Northumbrian from the Duke's train and couples it up to a carriage that's been occupied by a band previously. They're vacated, and the injured MP is placed inside with a small group of friends. His wife has fainted, but I believe she's in there. And they set off to Eccles, and then he's carried from the station to the vicarage, and a doctor is called. A tourniquet has been applied to his leg, but it's then not deemed possible to do a field amputation, as it would have been called. They were concerned that he would just die immediately. He's made comfortable with the assistance of the vicar's wife, Emma Blackburn, whose, quote, activity, sense and conduct were mentioned in the Manchester Courier and the Times and remembered with gratitude by Huskisson's wife, Emily, who arrived at the vicarage. And Huskisson's able to make his will, and at 9 o'clock, he finally succumbs to his injury. I mean, death from having your leg mangled. I believe it was I can never remember the bones of the leg. His thigh bone was broken in 2 places, and I think there was something to do with an artery. Obviously, if it had been absolutely cut through, he would have died much quicker than that. But it was a fairly horrendous way to go, I think. The tragic death of William Huskisson sent shockwaves rippling through British society, leaving an indelible mark in the nation's collective consciousness. As news of the accident spread, a sense of grief and sorrow swept across the country as people grappled with the sudden loss of a really, vocal, prominent person. Huskisson's untimely demise was mourned not only by his colleagues in government and industry, but ordinary citizens who'd admired his dedication to public service and his vision for a better, more prosperous Britain. He'd left a void in Parliament that could not easily be filled. It was particularly notable that someone who was such an advocate for railways and for progress should be the person to die in this way. And it was a sombre reminder of the dangers inherent in the pursuit of progress and the need for greater caution and foresight in the implementation of new technologies and infrastructure. For many, his death was a wake-up call prompting a re-evaluation of the risks and benefits associated with the rapid pace of industrialisation and modernisation sweeping the nation. The tragic accident that claimed the life of William Huskisson had far-reaching implications for railway safety regulations and public perception of this revolutionary mode of transportation. There was a renewed focus for improving safety measures, stricter regulations. Railway companies were compelled to invest in better signalling systems, improved track maintenance, and enhanced safety protocols. However, I think it is worth mentioning that it sounds like he was being particularly, the only one I can think of is dippy It's not a very good word, is it? But I feel like everyone else just sort of stepped out of the way as you would, and he just sort of got a bit panicked. So public perception of the railway as a symbol of progress and modernity was tempered by this newfound awareness of its potential dangers, prompting a more nuanced and cautious approach to its development and expansion, which perhaps is not a bad thing. In the years that followed, the lessons learned from William Huskisson's tragic death would shape the evolution of the railway industry. And I think it probably did make people a bit more wary. And that is the story of the death of William Huskisson, the first passenger to die on British Railway. I didn't know about this one until my husband told me about it the other day. We live quite near a steam train, and I don't know what made him think of it, but it doesn't sound like a very dignified way to go. And in front of all your friends is not ideal, but also it sounds absolutely brutal and sad. He just actually implemented. It's a funny thing to do these stories and meet a person in history who actually did something incredibly influential. He is known as the first passenger to die on British Railways, but actually he implemented the minimum wage because factories were not paying their workers enough to survive on. And some factories would pay better than others, and there was no regulation. And that is huge. We may scoff at what the minimum wage is, but at least there is something in place. And so that's down to William Huskisson. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll probably be doing something a bit more gruesome next week. I love to hear from you. So do send an email, themondaynightrevue@gmail.com. You can find us on social media at The Monday Night Review. And until next time, be kind, stay safe, and always check the back seat before you drive.